Hi guys, as promised, I'm going to go over the answers to the last test of To Kill a Mockingbird, chapters 22 to 31. So, whenever I feel like there's good text, or whenever I feel like you need text in order to understand the answer, then I'll go over that. But for the most part, a lot of them were very self explanatory and I can just explain them without. Okay, so we're going to start. And the first question is, the day after the trial, Miss Maudie, what does she do? This has to do with Jem. And she baked two little cakes and one big cake. Well, why? Well, not only is Jem growing up, but this is definitely because he's coming of age. Some of you guys thought it was losing his innocence, but having a big slice of a big cake has nothing to do with losing your innocence. It has to do with growing up. It has to do with kind of like, at Thanksgiving when you guys move from the little kid table to the adult table. It's that kind of thing. She does it mostly to make Jem feel better. She knows that he's having a really hard time with the results of the trial, with Tom being found guilty even though he was innocent, and so she does this to make him feel a little better, to make him feel like you're growing up, and so it's going to be these two, C and F. Number 2, Miss Maudie agrees with Jem that no one in Maycomb did one thing to help Tom Robinson. This is false. Miss Maudie disagrees with Jem. She says that actually these are baby steps, that that all sorts of things happen to show that people are changing in Maycomb. For instance, the judge chose Atticus for this particular case because she knew that he would do a good job in defending Tom. Tom was supposed to get just a random lawyer, a court-appointed lawyer, and he was going to be young, he was going to be inexperienced, probably racist, and so the Judge Taylor chose Atticus because he's the best lawyer in town, and that shows that he actually wanted Tom to have a chance. And she says, you think about it, Miss Maudie was saying, it was no accident. I was sitting there on the porch that night, and I waited and waited to see you come down the sidewalk. And as I waited, I thought, Atticus Finch won't win. He can't win. But he's the only man in these parts who could keep a jury out so long in a case like that. And I thought to myself, well, we're making a step. It's just a baby step, but it's a step. So again, she disagrees with him because she knows that this is a baby step, but there are people that actually are changing and that aren't as racist as they used to be. Atticus explains Mayella's motives for lying by comparing her to, this is pretty much, I was checking to see if you read. And so this is going to be a child who feels guilty. He compares it to a child who breaks something. Like whenever when you were little, if you broke like a vase or something at your house and you would try to hide the vase so your parents wouldn't know. So she wanted to get rid of the evidence, and the evidence would be Tom. The evidence of her transgression. And what was her transgression? Her sin was hitting on a black man. While walking, Boo home, Scout says I would never lead him home. She's implying that she is aware of the need to preserve Boo's dignity in public. She doesn't want the town gossips. She doesn't want all these other people to see them. Her walking him like a little kid, because she's aware that they're going to, again, keep saying things about Boo, and she wants them to see him as a gentleman. Number 5. Whom does Sheriff Tate say killed Bob Ewell? This was a little confusing because there are all sorts of things that happened, but he says that Bob Ewell killed himself, and he's lying. But at the end, Atticus tries to explain to Scout why. He says, do you understand? Do you understand why we have to say that? And again, because he's always been very honest. But in this particular case, if they actually say that Boo killed Bob Ewell, people are going to want to come to his house to thank him. And again, this would be like punishing Boo because he doesn't want to be around people. He's a recluse. So the whole thing is, we know who killed Bob Ewell. Boo Radley did. But Sheriff Tate is going to say that it was Bob Ewell accidentally killing himself, so that no one bothers Boo Radley. And no, they don't have, there doesn't have to be any sort of inquiry. There doesn't have to be anything. Everyone just leaves him alone. Number 6. Characters' personalities can be static, stay the same, or dynamic, which means to change or grow from beginning to end of a novel. Which of the following characters are dynamic? Well, these are the characters that change. A lot of you guys chose Atticus. Atticus is awesome from beginning to end of the book. He's great. But Scout changes. She comes of age a little bit. She starts to see things. She learns how to empathize. Jem definitely comes of age, and he loses his innocence with the trial. He realizes how ugly the world actually is. And then finally we see Aunt Alexandra, even though she's an adult and we wouldn't expect her to have to already grow up at that age. She should have already been grown up, but she starts to show that she's different. She does things like she's less racist. She understands that Tom was innocent, and she understands what everyone in the family's going through and what Tom's family's going through. And then finally she brings, after the attack, she brings Scout her overalls. She hates those overalls. She thinks that they're not feminine, right? And so this shows that she actually is growing and changing. 7, which of the following are indications that Aunt Alexandra is becoming a better person and less judgmental? I just covered some of them. She brings Scout her overalls after she's attacked by Bob Ewell. She worries about Atticus and the impact of the trial on him. Before, she was teaching her grandson to call him an N-lover and saying he was shaming the family and all sorts of stuff. And then finally, she's polite to Boo Radley when he's in their home. Remember, she thinks very highly of herself and the family, and she thinks that everyone else is trash, but she treats him with respect, even though he's a town weirdo. So that shows a lot of difference from before, how she was. What surprises Scout about juries? Well, a lot of these are facts, but the thing that she was surprised about was that women can't serve on a jury. Because again, the whole theme of male-female roles and sexism, that's a thing that keeps coming up in the book. Not only is there's racism in the book, obviously, but there's also sexism with the way that she sees the world and the way that people see her. And she sees it as unfair. There's a lot of things that she wants to do herself that she's not allowed to do, like go swimming with the boys because they're naked, like pee standing up like the boys, like a lot of things like that. And there's just one more thing, is the fact that she can't serve on a jury when she grows up. Number 9, this was an open-ended response. A lot of you guys didn't do so well on this one, and I want to explain it as well as I can. What does Jem mean when he says that he thinks Boo wants to stay inside because he wants to stay inside? So what happens is, this is after he loses his innocence, after the trial, after he realizes how crappy people are, how racist people are, and then he realizes that that the world's ugly. And so they're having this conversation. He and Scout are having this conversation about different types of people. And he says, I think there's this kind of people, and that kind of people, and this kind of people. And Scout's like, no, there's just folks. He's like, I used to scout before. And that's basically before he lost his innocence, before the trial, before he saw how ugly and racist people were. So then he says, I'm beginning to understand why Boo doesn't come out, because he wants to avoid the ugliness of the world, is basically it. Some of you guys, I don't know, had the same answer about him Boo not having any manners or any social manners. That's not it at all. I don't know where you got that one. That's why you guys should answer the questions yourselves and not Google them somewhere, because that was wrong completely. Number 10. According to Jem, what types of people live in Maycomb? And this is what we were just talking about. He thinks that he's an ordinary person because, we all think we're normal, right? He thinks there's 2 types of poor people. Poor people like the Cunninghams, which have some sort of morals, right? And keep themselves clean and are respectable people. And poor people like the Ewells, which are, seen as the scum of the town. And then black people in general, he kind of lumps them all together. Granted, black people at that time, especially in the South, were going to be poor. But he doesn't know enough about them to categorize them. There are no rich people at this time in the South, especially in the U.S., because it was during the Great Depression, and there are no black rich people as well. Okay, 11. According to Scout, there's only one type of people. Yes, that's true. Because again, she's innocent. She hasn't lost her innocence like Jem has after the trial. She still sees the world as, oh, everyone's great, people are nice. No, they're not. And Scout sees them as one. Everyone's just people. We're all the same color, we're all the same. And Jem realizes that that's not the case. The people are treated differently. Number 12, during Aunt Alexandra's missionary circle. A lot of you guys probably thought that was a lame chapter, but I love it. I think it's hilarious, and I used to love to read it aloud. Of course, obviously, right now, we're not in the classroom, but basically, I love to read it aloud because of just the hypocrisy of that whole group. There are two women in particular that are very hypocritical, and the answer to this one is Miss Maudie defends Atticus when Mrs. Merriweather accused Atticus of, oh, that's not it. Mrs. Merriweather insinuated that Atticus was misguided but wrong in defending Tom. She says that basically he shouldn't have defended Tom because now all the black people are upset. And she totally shows how callous and how unempathetic she is because these people have a right to be angry. Someone from their community, someone from their own church was unjustly found guilty and is going to get sent to the electric chair. And she doesn't see that at all. All she cares about is, my Sophie is just so upset all the time. So this shows that she is racist because she complains about black people and she calls her housekeeper's hair nappy, basically. She says that she has wool on her head. And that's super racist. She's a hypocrite because she's saying all this stuff about being Christian, but she's not acting very Christian. She's being a jerk, and she's judging, and she's gossiping about people. And also, she's not empathizing with the black community. So those three things are the answer to this question. Number 14, another open-ended response that some of us didn't do very well on. So, was Tom's purpose to escape when he got shot? This one required a lot of analysis, and some of you guys didn't bother thinking about it. You guys just went to the text, and you didn't think beyond the lines. You just thought on the lines for this one. So what happens here is Atticus says that he basically bolted, and he had no chance of escaping because not only is his arm ripped off, not working, but the fence was so high and he didn't have enough time. Like, he just bolted like a crazy person. But basically, he mentions the fact that Tom knew that he wasn't going to win the appeal. He had no hope. And also, he didn't want to put his family through another trial. So it's basically death by prison guard. He committed suicide by trying to jump over the fence. He knew they were going to shoot him. He just wanted it to be over. And he didn't want his family to have to go through that anymore. Number 15. During Alexandra's missionary circle, Scout says that she'd rather be around men. This whole thing is so funny the way she puts it, because they aren't hypocrites. This is when she's listening to these women talk. They're kind of rude to her. Also, they tease her. They tease her about wanting to be a lawyer because they're making fun of the whole court case. And so she says, she's talking about, it says, but I was more at home in my father's world. People like Mr. Hecate did not trap you with innocent questions to make fun of you. Even Jem was not highly critical unless you said something stupid. Ladies seemed to live in faint horror of men, seemed unwilling to approve wholeheartedly of them. But I liked them. There was something about them. No matter how much they cussed and drank and gambled and chewed, no matter how undelectable they were, there was something about them that I instinctively liked. They weren't, she ends there, there's a dash. And the dash follows with Mrs. Merriweather talking, and it says, hypocrites, Mrs. Perkins? Born hypocrites, Mrs. Merriweather was saying. So she finishes the conversation or the thought for Scout, but she actually finishes it talking about herself. She's a hypocrite. So that whole thing was kind of funny. Atticus asked Jem to go with him to tell Tom's wife about his death. This is false. He asked Calpurnia because Calpurnia knows Helen Robinson. Jem just happens to be walking home from the swimming hole with Dill, and so they hitched a ride with Atticus, but he didn't ask them to go. He purposefully asked Calpurnia. Jem telling Scout not to kill a bug shows which of the following thematic topics. It's 3 of them. It's gender roles. No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's not shooting a mockingbird. The whole purpose of the title is don't hurt something that doesn't hurt you. So this bug wasn't doing anything to her and she wanted to squish it just for no reason. So he gets that now. Empathy. He empathizes with the bug and he empathizes with life in general. So he doesn't want to kill it. Finally, coming of age. He's mature. He's not going to go around killing bugs just because like Scout is still immature, right? So it's those three right there. Number 18. The following quote is an example of, and when I read you guys the last chapter in that last video, I explained it, and I explained what it did to this particular part of the book. She says, as I made my way home, I felt very old, blah, 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 blah. As I made my way home, I thought, what a thing to tell Jem tomorrow. He'd be so mad he missed it. As I made my way home, I thought Jem and I would get grown. The repetition of as I made my way home, as I made my way home, as I made my way home happens at the beginning of the lines. So that cannot be refrain. Refrain happens in the middle or at the end of lines or an entire line that's repeated. At the beginning is anaphora. Everything else is just sounds that are repeated. Alliteration, sound, assonance, sound. An allusion is a reference to something. So the only one that fits is anaphora. This one, and the example of Stoner's boy at the end of the novel mirrors Bob Ewell. This is false. It actually mirrors Boo Radley because this whole example from the book is talking about how this character Stoner's boy, no one knew what he looked like. Everyone thought he was evil. Everyone thought he was up to all the shenanigans or responsible for all the shenanigans around town. And when they finally met him, when they finally saw him, they saw he was a nice person. This is exactly what Boo Radley was like. Everyone thought like there's this like ghost, we don't know him. He's probably doing all these things. He kills cats, he does this, he eats rats, he eats squirrels. That's not the case when she finally meets him. She sees that he's actually a good person and she likes him. And he's a good person. He did all these good things for them throughout. 20. What does Scout say is like shooting a mockingbird? She finally gets it. It was like an epiphany at the very end. And you guys should have been so proud of her. But at the very end of chapter 30, she says, yes, sir, I understand. I reassured him when he says we can't tell the truth about who killed Bob Ewell. She says, well, it'd be sort of like shooting a mockingbird, wouldn't it? So she thinks that telling people who really killed Bob Ewell would be like shooting a mockingbird because Boo Radley only helps them, is nice, does all these sweet things for them, and they would be punishing him. It'd basically be like shooting a mockingbird because they'd be punishing Boo by telling people who actually killed Bob Ewell because people would want to come visit him and thank him, and that would really affect him negatively. Number 21 is... which of the following characters are mockingbirds? That's the whole point of the title, right? We talked about how important titles are. This is an amazing title because there are 3 mockingbirds in this book. We have Boo Radley, does nice things for people, does nice things for the kids, did nothing but help the kids and save the kids' lives at the end. And they are not going to hurt him. They're not going to tell the town who killed Bob Ewell because that would affect him. Atticus Finch helps people around town, is helping Mr. Cunningham with his entailment, takes this pro bono case for Tom Robinson and like puts all his effort into trying to get him acquitted. And he's also hurt by the town because of the gossip, because of people calling him names, because Bob Ewell tries to kill his kids. He's a mockingbird. Finally, Tom Robinson is a mockingbird. He did nothing but help Mayella Ewell. He never took any payment for anything he did for her. He always felt like he needed to help her. He felt sorry for her. They're all mockingbirds. And those 3 characters really did do a lot, and they were affected negatively by the town. Okay, so that's it, guys. That is the last chapters, and that's the last test. I'm almost done grading them. I'm going in and putting in partial credit for some of you all, but they should be done by tonight. My grades are due to tomorrow morning. Actually, no, at noon. So I'm going to turn in the itemized grades from Schoology to the principal, and then in the grade book, we're going to have P and NP. So if you turn something in late and I haven't seen it yet, as long as it's not ridiculously late, send me a reminder and tell me about it, and I'll check it before I finish grading. Okay? And also, I wanted to tell you guys I am so sad because usually we have a little party or something at the end of the year, and I didn't get to do any of that with you guys. And I really enjoyed being your teacher, and I hope that you learned this year, and I hope you appreciated the books that we read. They're some of my favorites. That's why we read them, because I love them, but I also think that you're going to get a lot from them. So I hope you did. And also, I hope you picked up a bunch of skills that'll help you in the, not only in your future classes, but in college and in work and writing and daily lives. And again, I enjoyed you all. You all were awesome. And I'm going to miss you. So please come see me next year. Okay?